The grand chamber of the Galactic Senate was a cathedral of arrogance. Gleaming alloy pillars twisted like frozen vines up toward a ceiling etched with constellations only two species could actually see. Every footstep echoed with the heavy silence of political theater. Alien dignitaries, scaled, feathered, gelatinous, preened in their stations, all watching the strange new arrivals stepping into the Empire's light for the first time. And at the center of them all, calmly sipping tea from a battered stainless steel mug, stood General Vagia O'Neill. She wasn't much to look at least not by galactic standards. Mid-40s by human reckoning. Soft lines of time around her eyes, hair cropped short for utility, and a posture that said retired librarian more than military tactician. She wore a black uniform with muted blue piping and no rank insignia, save for a curious patch, red thread woven into the shape of a hut with chicken legs. Most dismissively assumed it was a cultural joke. But the real curiosity was the ink. It peeked from beneath her left sleeve, black lines, densely packed and curling like roots. Not decorative, not ceremonial, practical and ancient. It crept over her hand and onto her fingers like spilled oil, stopping just short of her knuckles. She stood beside her aides, all human, all quiet. She was the only one smiling. Let the record show, drawled a voice from the center dais, that the Human Federation has sent a representative to negotiate terms of mutual technological transparency. High Chancellor Volk of the Via Reth species was a porcupine-skinned brute with a voice like a smoldering forge. He peered down at Vagia through 6 emerald eyes and added, though we expected someone with more teeth. Soft laughter stirred among the Senate members. The Trinari floated above their seats in their anti-grav pods and gurgled amusedly. The Zelnari ambassador tilted his elongated skull toward his neighbor and muttered in low standard, "Is that ink?" "Primitive." Vagia looked up, smiled, and bowed slightly. "Your concern for my dental health is appreciated, Chancellor. We humans sometimes chew sugar glass when we're bored." Builds grit. That earned a pause. She raised her mug and continued, "But I assure you, the Federation takes this meeting seriously. We're delighted to be here. There's so much to learn from an empire as experienced as yours." The Trinari wobbled uncertainly. Volk narrowed his eyes. "We are not here to trade compliments, General O'Neill," he said. "Your Federation's growth along the southern spiral has been aggressive." Vagia gave a short, amused breath. "Expansion by invitation, Chancellor. Every system we touched, we were asked into. By your oppressed border species, if I recall." "That was a misunderstanding," Volk said. "One you've yet to correct." "I find misunderstandings correct themselves with time," she murmured, swirling her tea. Another delegate leaned forward. Ambassador Shrell of the Methari, a translucent species with a fondness for war games and cruel bets. He tapped a claw against the table, leaned toward her, and said, "Tell us, General, is that tattoo a mating mark? Or perhaps a personal history of failure?" A flicker of something passed through her eyes. She extended her arm just slightly, allowing a bit more ink to show. The pattern looked chaotic, twisting arcs, jagged strikes, and near-invisible coordinates along a spiraling path. "It's a map," she said softly. "To where?" Shrell asked with a sneer. "Graves," she replied, then sipped her tea. The room quieted a little too quickly. Some chuckled nervously. Others glanced at one another, trying to decode the tone. Vagia didn't flinch. "It's cultural," she added, voice light again. "We mark the ones we lose. Each one reminds us not to make the same mistake, or to make it better next time." There was silence. Then Volk huffed. "Charming. But sentiment won't help you if conflict breaks out. Your vessels are quaint. Your weapons kinetic. Do your soldiers throw spears as well?" Vagia smiled again, tired, patient, faintly amused. "Only when it's more efficient." The aides behind her didn't move. Their stillness felt unnatural, practiced. One of them, a younger man with soft hands and sunken eyes, seemed to be mentally calculating something. Another, a woman with her hair in braids and a scar along her neck, watched the room like a hawk. Vagia continued, "I understand your concern, Chancellor. We do come from a violent past. But we've learned restraint. For example, we didn't retaliate when your scouts scanned our medical fleets. We didn't respond when our trade vessels were shadowed. We didn't even protest when your news feeds aired simulations of Earth's destruction. You had no grounds, Vrolk said. No need, Vajia corrected gently. You see, where we come from, the wolf doesn't howl before it strikes. It smiles. The silence this time was heavier. The aides behind her shifted ever so slightly. Vrolk barked, "Are you threatening the Galactic Senate?" She raised her eyebrows. "Chancellor, if I were threatening you, you'd be looking at a recording." The aide smiled. She looked at her wrist, where the ink curved inward toward her palm. "I believe we're scheduled for a tour of your communications center next." "That tour has been canceled." "Has it?" Vajia nodded. "No worries. I've already seen it." "You have not." She cut him off politely. "Not physically, no. But your deck engineers carry personal AI units that interface with external quantum relays, which means, with a long enough handshake and proper mimetic prompting, any nearby device can stream, let's say. Useful for catching up on local architecture." There was a moment of still, seething quiet. "You're bluffing," someone muttered. "I drink tea," she said. "I don't bluff." The aides behind her stepped forward. Each one pulled a data rod from their uniform. "Since you canceled the tour, we thought we'd return the favor," said the one with the scar. "We've mapped your comm grid, weak points, redundancies, failovers." "And the fleet hangar protocols," added the young man. "Your security algorithms are redundant. 83% of your fighter class can be overridden by this string." He handed the rod to a trembling Methari aide. Vajia watched the faces change. She took another sip and let the flavor linger. Chamomile, with a dash of something bitter. "You see," she said calmly, "you mocked a tattoo, but failed to understand the species that wears it. You thought the marks were emotional indulgence. But in truth, they're instruction manuals. Warnings. Blueprints for those who come after." Vrolk stood, his spikes bristling. "This is not negotiation, it's sabotage." "No," she said, slowly lowering her mug, "this is negotiation. Sabotage would have been if I didn't show up." Her eyes sharpened. "We don't want war. But we prepare for it the same way we prepare for peace. With forethought. With maps. With names. You call us primitive because we remember our dead in ink. You forget yours in sand." A long moment passed. Then, as if to underscore her point, every holoscreen in the room flickered. A series of tactical diagrams bloomed, maps of Empire-controlled sectors, overlaid with subtle pulses of red. Not threats. Observations. The Methari aide dropped his data rod. "This is a show," someone whispered. "Of patience," Vajia said. "Of restraint. Of what you still have, and what we could have taken." Then she turned to leave. She didn't hurry. Her boots echoed softly. The aides followed in practiced lockstep. Before passing through the archway, she paused and looked back. "You asked what my tattoo meant," she said. "It means I'm still watching. It means the ones who came before me didn't die for nothing. And it means, should the Empire choose the path of arrogance again, the next conversation won't involve words." She smiled one last time. "I'd rather stick with tea, though. It tastes better than blood." And with that, she was gone. The chamber remained still. No one dared speak first. A quiet dread slipped like mist over the assembled diplomats. Somewhere far away, in a forgotten corner of the galaxy, a sensor pinged. A satellite lost connection. A ship rerouted. And the faint lines of a tattoo shifted ever so slightly under the skin of a woman walking calmly toward her next meeting. The banquet hall of the Galactic consulate shimmered with artificial opulence. Chandeliers of shifting plasma, floating plates of atmospheric cuisine tailored to alien biologies, and background music designed by algorithm to offend no species and please none. The chairs adjusted to spine shapes. The wine changed color depending on who looked at it. It was all very advanced and very hollow. General Vajia O'Neill sat at the far end of the elongated table, tea mug freshly refilled, surrounded by half-smiling predators who had spent centuries refining the art of pretending peace. Her expression remained relaxed, posture lazy, gaze half-lidded like she hadn't slept in days, and had no intention of apologizing for it. She was not wearing full dress uniform, just a collared jacket, sleeves rolled to the elbows, revealing more of that maddening tattoo. She made no effort to hide it anymore. The aliens couldn't stop looking. It wasn't a map, not a star chart. It was too human. It felt alive, as if it responded to memory, not geography. Ambassador Shrell of the Medhari took another sip of his liquid nutrient gel and cleared his throat with that species' signature whistle. You humans are obsessed with ink, I've decided. Everything you have, you mark. Identity, memory, punishment. Is it because you lack permanence in other things? Vajia tilted her head. We like things that scar well. Makes the stories easier to find later. Several aliens chuckled. Others glanced down the table, gauging her rhythm. High Chancellor Volk sat at the center again, flanked by his guards, one eye half-focused on a private feed. Rumors had reached him, quiet failures, strange technical hiccups, patrol vessels blinking out of sync. Isolated incidents. Nothing confirmed. Nothing public. So tell us, General, he said, using her rank now with just enough sneer to make it sting. Does the Federation always conduct diplomacy with intimidation? She met his eyes over her tea. Only with species who confuse kindness for weakness. There was a pause. A faint ripple of tension moved through the servers, gliding around the room. Have you tasted this? She asked suddenly, pointing to the tiny plate in front of her. It's delightful. Reminds me of my grandmother's borscht, although she'd probably throw a shoe at me for comparing it. The Trinari ambassador, bobbing beside his plate of bioluminescent fungi, asked, Borscht? A weapon. A soup, she said. Or both. Depends how bad your aim is. Laughter, genuine this time, lightened the room. For a moment, the stiffness softened. Vajia leaned back and let them relax. She always gave a little before she took. Ambassador Shrell leaned closer. You've been to over 16 contested sectors, General. Why assign a peace envoy to so many war zones? Field experience, she replied. And some of them weren't war zones until after I left. Coincidence. She smiled. You tell me. The aides flanking her remained quiet. Their names hadn't been offered. Their eyes moved constantly. One of them, pale-skinned, sharp-cheeked, young, slid a data slate under the table and tapped it once. Vajia didn't look, but she shifted her mug an inch to the left, aligning with the movement. Across the hall, a Viareth admiral named Cernine narrowed his eyes. General, what would your people say if this dinner were not merely a performance, but a probe? I'd say they'd be flattered, Vajia replied. It means the Empire finally believes we're worth lying to. Cernine bristled. Do you mean to imply? I mean to say, Vajia interrupted, that if you've already decided we're dangerous, you might as well stop pretending we're not smart. Another silence fell. She let it linger. Then she added gently, though I do appreciate the effort. Chancellor Volk growled low in his throat, leaning forward on his elbows. The Empire has endured for 40,000 years, General. Not through deception, through clarity, through discipline. You, on the other hand, come from a fragmented world still reeling from its own savagery. And yet here I sit, she murmured, at your table. He ignored the comment. We've studied your culture. You glorify vengeance. You mythologize fear. Baba Yaga, your soldiers say. We thought it a code word. Is it? Vajia's lips curved, faintly. No, it's a bedtime story, meant to scare children into behaving, or teach them who not to cross. Tell us then, Shrell purred. Why does the ink show her name? Vajia took another long sip, then set her mug down with care. Because someone has to remember the monster we made to survive monsters like you. That was the moment the aides moved. Not quickly, not threateningly, but purposefully. The young man pulled a smooth hexagonal device from his jacket and slid it onto the table. The scarred woman pressed her hand flat against it. No sound, no flash. But across the room, several alien devices sparked, projectors, communicators, even the nutrient servers. Brief flickers of static, glitches. Nothing that looked dramatic. Nothing that felt dangerous. until they tried to speak into their channels and realized they couldn't. "Interesting party trick," muttered Admiral Cernine, trying and failing to open a private feed. "What is this?" "A demonstration," said Vajia. "You see, I told you we learned restraint. But humans don't just remember pain. We record it. And if you record something long enough, you can play it back." "Explain," Vrolk snapped. "We were scanned," she said. "Prodded. Monitored. So we responded in kind. We just did it quieter." "You hacked us," Shrell hissed. "No," Vajia said. "You hacked yourselves. We just left doors open. You walked through them." Across the hall, screens flickered again. A map shimmered into view, subtle at first, then sharper. Galactic sectors lit in red. Empire bases. Relay stations. All tagged with simple human phrases. "Heard you were lonely. Nice firewall. Cute. Did you mean to leave this unlocked?" Murmurs turned into arguments. Some tried to shut the feed down. Others pulled out weapons that refused to power up. Several senators stormed out. Vajia remained seated, fingers calmly drumming her tea mug. "You think this is funny?" Vrolk roared. "I think it's necessary," she said. "Then you've declared war." "Not yet. But you're welcome to." They stared at her, waiting for fear. There was none. Only that maddening calm. "Why are you here?" Vrolk demanded. "To give you a choice," she replied. "You can adapt, learn, share, or you can keep mocking the tattoo and pretend you're not bleeding." "And what do you want?" She paused, then said quietly, "I want your empire to survive long enough to realize how close it came to extinction without ever seeing the blade." He stared. She stared back. The screens dimmed. The map vanished. A beat later, all alien devices restored themselves. Communication links returned. Security networks flickered back on. No trace of intrusion remained. As if the humans had only shown them a ghost. One of her aides retrieved the hex device. The other slid it back into a coat pocket. Neither of them spoke. Vajia stood. The chair scraped softly against the floor. "I've said enough," she murmured. "And you've heard more than you understand. Leave," Vrolk said, "before you regret staying." She bowed. Not mockingly, just deeply enough to acknowledge the performance. As she turned, Shrell called out, "Your kind is spirit, General, but it's still flesh beneath all that ink." She paused 1 foot forward and replied, "You'd be amazed what stories do to flesh." Then she left. The hall fell into chaotic whispering. Delegates argued in their native tongues, demanding protocols, demanding proof, demanding blood. Behind the decorative walls, a hidden recording glowed in its pod. Vajia's words, her tone, the images she allowed, and something else, a brief flash the others didn't see. In that flash, her tattoo had moved. Not literally, but with her muscles flexing, it had looked alive. In its folds and twists, a symbol appeared. Not myth, not code, a name. And next to that name, coordinates. Coordinates that had already gone dark. In the silence of his private chamber, Vrolk reviewed the feed 3 times. Then he summoned his war council. The command spires of the Galactic Empire trembled, not from outside assault, but from within. Alerts flickered across consoles with muted urgency. Technicians whispered updates that made no sense. Internal redundancies were vanishing. Navigation nodes blinking into static. Star relay beacons, a trillion cred infrastructure, reporting phantom loops. In half a dozen systems, vessels were not where they should be. Some appeared inside others. Some simply didn't respond. It wasn't war. It was wrongness. General Vajia O'Neill sat in a modest diplomatic holding room on Stationarian. For where everything smelled faintly of sterilized ambition. The walls projected serene starfields. Her tea, steeping beside her, released a calming aroma of mint and ash. Across from her sat Admiral Runal of the Dras Coalition, a crustacean-like war tactician with 3 hearts and 0 sense of irony. He drummed his clawed fingers against the armrest, glaring through multifaceted lenses. Behind him, an aide whispered into his ear and paled immediately. "Are you smiling?" he asked, incredulous. Vajia swirled her tea gently. just thinking about a proverb. If the fish doesn't see the hook, perhaps the water isn't so safe after all. The Admiral growled. You tampered with our fleet logs. Our comm beacons are returning gibberish. I did no such thing, she replied, tone even. Your systems are simply responding to questions you didn't know were being asked. You infiltrated our defense lattice. I asked for a tour. You declined, so I walked around the side entrance. You mean espionage? She tilted her head, a word with a moral weight. I prefer the term diagnostic curiosity. His exoskeletal plates twitched. What is your objective? Insight, leverage, and possibly dinner, if this conversation ends before my tea cools. Runal stood suddenly, turning away to bark into a private channel. The feed stuttered, froze, restarted itself. He turned back slower this time. General O'Neill, he said, with forced calm, you are under formal review for interference with internal Empire functions. You will be held for questioning. Vajia took a calm sip and nodded. As long as we question each other. I have a few queries about your habitat clusters on New Syndril. For example, the number of missing children in sectors where your science fleets conduct radiation drills. He froze. She set the mug down, precisely centered on the table. Do you think silence makes a thing less real? I think, he said, voice gravel, you are overreaching. I think I'm just catching up. Outside the room, muted alarms escalated. Station lighting dimmed unnaturally, then corrected itself in a way that felt too intentional. A distant hum vibrated through the floor, not damage, not weapon fire, but a shift in data gravity. Signals turning in on themselves. Her aides waited just beyond the door, faces blank, fingers moving behind their backs in the old battle signer's code. Not one military officer in the Empire had recognized the gesture. The aide with the scar, Delana, tapped her heel twice, once, then 3 times in sequence. Vajia didn't look, but her shoulder relaxed. It was done. She rose. Runal bristled. You'll stay where you are. I think not. We've already overstayed the illusion of diplomacy. You'll be arrested. No, Admiral, she said, walking past him without a glance. I'll be remembered. The moment she passed through the threshold, the feed recording the room shorted. All backup copies self-corrupted. Her fingerprints vanished from the panel. Not wiped, never logged. Runal tried to shout into his comms. They refused to open. The walls dimmed. And somewhere, something began to play. A voice. Human. Soft. A child's lullaby in Russian. Vajia stepped into the corridor and walked as if the hallways belonged to her. In the outer concourse, the Empire's command delegates had gathered in rising panic. Voices clashed in layered languages. Tactical displays updated too fast to read. On-screen maps showed entire sectors darkening. Relay by relay, hub by hub. Fleet movement reports contradicted each other. Starships blinked out of known space. Entire staging fleets, once idle, now registered on human channels, but not moving toward Earth. They were circling Empire outposts. Watching. In the chaos, Vajia found a quiet corner. Her aides joined her silently. Everything, she asked. Delana nodded. Coordinates confirmed. Our agents are safe. Local resistance cells ready. Civilians have been extracted. The Empire still doesn't know how many of their citizens are no longer in their own systems, added the younger aide, Rafi. We pulled 20 million in 2 months. Vajia looked out at the stars displayed on the curved wall. They assumed no one would help the small ones. The ones they called excess. Their mistake, Delana said. Where's our final transmission vector? Here, said Rafi, handing over a secure comm chip. Broadcast channels are theirs. But the message will be ours, she finished. Outside, the Imperial command structure strained to present comm. Chancellor Vrolk's voice boomed over shared channels, promising order, blaming malfunction, downplaying what was quickly becoming undeniable. Systems weren't failing. They were being repurposed. Every installation that had absorbed human support, energy converters, logistics routes, med bays, was now running human firmware. Not sabotaged, just quietly incompatible with everything else. We didn't infect them, Vajia murmured. We offered patches. Most downloaded automatically, said Rafi. And the rest? They'll find out. They walked together into the central nexus. No weapons drawn. No shields raised. Just a woman in half uniform and two ghosts beside her. The delegates froze. One barked. You cannot be here. I am here, she said, voice echoing. So are you. And now it's time you listened. We've heard enough threats. Then consider this a bedtime story. The screens flickered. Every channel overridden. Vajia's voice filled the station, soft and clear, translated in perfect syntax to every species. You believed the tattoo was a boast, a mark of savagery. You stared at my arm and laughed, thinking it held superstition. She rolled back her sleeve. More lines. More markings. They moved not truly, but the illusion gripped the eye. The pattern was purposeful. Each line is a system. Each dot a soul. Each burn a memory. The display behind her bloomed open. Tactical overlays emerged, showing the real-time collapse of the Empire's command authority. Your arrogance was predictable, she continued. You relied on intimidation, on the belief that history belongs to the loudest voice. But humans, we write history in scars. Now her voice sharpened. You called us primitive. We listened. You called us unpredictable. We observed. You called us dangerous, and you were right. A dozen delegates shouted. Power surged and died. We didn't strike first, she said. We gave you offers. Trade. Medicine. Respect. You spat on everyone. And you mocked the tattoo. She turned. A final sequence loaded behind her, projecting images of refugee ships, Empire planets abandoned. Whole populations vanished into silence. Where did they go? Vajia asked the room. They came to us. They asked for protection. We gave it. Because unlike you, we don't discard those who can't fight back. The Drask Admiral lunged. Delana intercepted him with a motion too fast to trace. He hit the floor gasping. No blood. Just the precise edge of a nerve lock. Vajia didn't blink. She addressed the room again. We've taken nothing by force. And yet what you called yours no longer answers your voice. Rafi handed her a final key. She pressed it to her palm. The tattoo glowed faintly, not in color, but in memory. A hidden chip beneath her skin activated. Every story ends, she said. Ours begins now. The chip pulsed. Across the Empire, every human-modified relay station sent out one phrase, encoded in a protocol the aliens couldn't block. We are awake. A single command followed. Stand down. Or disappear. Vajia turned and walked away. She didn't stay for the screaming. In the deep silences of the Empire's core systems, beneath the shimmering facades of power and age, something was unraveling with terrifying elegance. Not torn, not smashed, unpicked, thread by careful thread, by hands that had smiled while setting the table. Entire command fleets floated aimlessly, unable to receive orders. Orbital relays reset themselves in unfamiliar languages. Civilian AI networks, thought harmless, began to distribute rerouted messages about evacuation protocols humans had quietly installed weeks ago. On the moon of Tarna 6, where the Empire's military AI nexus was built into a glacier of living metal, the system tried to identify the incursion. There was no breach, no known virus, just a series of permissions, all marked approved, and everyone signed off by an entity known simply as Babanasoi. Above that glacier, aboard the floating command carrier grasp of Dominion, High Chancellor Volk gripped the railing of the observation deck, staring down at the ice as if willing it to give him an answer. The Empire had not prepared for this, not because they lacked weapons, but because they'd never conceived of an enemy that would ask politely before gutting their future. Behind him, Ambassador Shrell paced in a jittery rhythm, mandibles clacking with every measured step. You need to say something, he hissed. To the people, the Senate, the colonies. We're losing them. We've already lost them, Volk growled. We just didn't feel it yet. Across the deck, a console chimed. A young operator blinked at the incoming transmission. Sir, she said, voice tight. You'll want to see this. Vrolk turned, expecting more disaster. But what appeared on the screen stopped every motion in the room. General Vajia O'Neill, seated in a simple metal chair. Behind her a backdrop of stars and a single Earth flag. Weathered, real fabric, not holographic. Her tea sat steaming on the table beside her, a signal of both welcome and certainty. She smiled. "Chancellor," she began, voice soft, "I hope this message finds you in a contemplative mood. I understand there's been some turbulence." He barked. "Where are you broadcasting from?" "I could tell you," she said, "but you'd never believe the postal code." Shrell leaned forward. "You think this is funny? You've crippled our infrastructure. Do you realize the implications?" "Yes," she said, cutting him off. "Down to the decimal. We knew exactly how long it would take for each sector to recognize its isolation. We measured panic in seconds. We modeled how quickly local governors would begin hoarding rations. We projected your responses. You're on track." Vrolk's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" Vajia reached down, pulled her sleeve back, revealed the tattoo, fully now. It covered her entire arm, from shoulder to wrist, a lattice of circles and intersecting arcs, ancient Cyrillic woven into the skin like rivers. "You laughed at this," she said. "Mocked it. Said it was art. It isn't. It's memory. A record of pain, of choices. Every mark a name. Every curve of failure turned into fuel." She leaned forward. "You called me primitive. And I agreed. There's something ancient in us. But it's not ignorance. It's will. Your empire forgot what it meant to bleed for something worth keeping. You became gods of glass. We are still creatures of bone." Vrolk stepped closer to the screen. "You could have asked for a treaty. We would have negotiated." "No," she said. "You would have played diplomat until you learned how to cut deeper. We didn't want paper peace. We wanted freedom. And your empire doesn't permit that." Shrell growled. "So you'll destroy it all?" Vajia shook her head. "No. We'll rewrite it." She pressed a small square device into view. A final command node. Silent. Unblinking. "This is not a weapon. It's a vote." The screen split. In real time, citizens across the empire saw it. Fleets powering down, surrendering not to force, but to choice. Colonial governors publicly aligning with the human coalition. AI minds, once loyal to empire dogma, offering safe passage to defectors. A galaxy shifting not with fire, but with gravity. "Why?" Vrolk whispered, eyes wide. "Why do all this without drawing blood?" Vajia's expression softened. "Because your empire never understood power. You thought it was fear. But real power is memory enforced by patience. You threatened us. So we studied you. You caged us. So we became smoke. You forgot we were watching. But we never stopped." Then softer still. "And because we have children." For a moment, no one breathed. "Children." Shrell echoed. "Yes," she said. "Not just of blood. Of culture. Of duty. Of those you called lesser. You stole futures. We built a place for them. Your kind burns to rule. Ours burns to endure." Vrolk stepped back from the screen. "This can't be reversed." "No," she said. "This is earned." She tapped the node once. Across hundreds of systems, fail-safes deactivated. Empire control structures turned transparent. Economic monopolies cracked open like dry husks. Trade flowed where it once funneled. Entire species, long considered client races, simply walked away. Vajia stood. "One final note," she said. "You remember the moon of Thales? Where your soldiers cleared a village to test atmospheric weapons. You erased that incident from your history." She rolled her shoulder. "One of the survivors drew this line here," she said, tracing a black curve near her bicep. "He was 6. Died before we got to orbit. But not before he told us your fleet colors. So we made a promise." Her hand closed into a fist. "You won't forget again." The screen cut. Silence followed, sharp and absolute. Vrolk collapsed into his chair. He didn't rage. He didn't speak. He just stared at the dead screen, hands twitching. In the vacuum of the command bridge, someone murmured, "What now?" And no one answered. Somewhere in the quiet dark of reclaimed space, aboard a ship built not for war, but for remembrance, Vajya sat in a small private room, surrounded by whispers of old songs. She had taken off her jacket. Her tattoo gleamed in the dim light, not proud, not defiant, just steady. Rafi entered, holding a datapad. It's done. They surrendered the central archives. Public broadcast. No edits. Galana followed behind. Refugee ships are landing. Over 500,000 already safe. Vajya nodded. And the Empire? They're remembering, Rafi said. She closed her eyes, leaned back, and breathed in. What now? Galana asked. She didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, now we teach them the parts of the stories they never listened to. The ones about mercy. She reached for her tea. Still warm. Funny, she whispered. They thought it was ink. Neither aide spoke. They never realized, Vajya said, smiling, we write with scars. Outside her window, stars shifted. And somewhere far off, the myth of the Baba Yaga traveled faster than any fleet.